The key didn't fit. I tried again, harder this time, but the lock refused to turn. Cold air burned my lungs as I stared at the door I'd called home for 14 years. My phone buzzed, one new message from Mom. "We changed all the locks. You don't live here anymore. Let's see how brave you really are." For a moment I just stood there, trembling. Then I whispered, "If they erased me with a lock, I'll write myself back with proof." When people talk about home, they usually mean safety, warmth, and love. For me, it meant work, constant, exhausting, invisible work. I was 17 when I first started paying my parents' mortgage. My father, Harold, had been laid off from the hardware store, and Mom said it would just be a couple of months until things got back to normal. I picked up extra shifts at the gas station after school and handed her my paychecks. "Family doesn't keep tabs," she said, smiling. I believed her. That summer, I learned how to climb a roof and patch leaks because the contractor quote was too high. I remember balancing on the shingles while the sun burned my neck, listening to my mother below, laughing on the phone with her sister about how resourceful I'd become. Every nail I hammered felt like a promise: keep the house standing, and they'll see your worth. Years blurred into one long checklist. Mortgage payments. Electric bills. New water heater. Property tax. Groceries. Gas money. When my sister Bella turned 16, I helped buy her a used car so she wouldn't feel left out among her friends. Dad called me generous. Bella called me boring. I called it love. By 21, I'd become the family safety net. Whenever the power threatened to shut off, I paid it. When the washing machine broke, I replaced it. I kept receipts in a shoebox under my bed but never called them evidence. Mom always said, family isn't about numbers. So I kept paying, and she kept saying thank you without looking me in the eye. Bella was the star. She had the kind of easy confidence I never did. Straight hair, bright laugh, the one who took selfies in front of the house after I repainted the porch. Her captions always said grateful for home, and people commented how lucky she was. I'd double-tap her posts with hands still stained from primer. Every holiday followed the same pattern. Bella arrived late with stories from her job in marketing. Dad poured wine and toasted to her success. Mom served her extra slices of pie. When conversation turned to me, it was always practical. "Nora, did you fix that loose stair?" "Nora, can you check the water bill?" They weren't cruel. Just careless. Like I was another appliance in the house, helpful, humming quietly in the background. One winter, a storm ripped part of the roof clean off. The insurance payout didn't cover half the repairs. I maxed out my credit card to finish it because I couldn't stand seeing water drip into the hallway where our family photos hung. Dad said, "You've got your mother's heart." I didn't realize it was meant as an insult until later. The older I got, the more the debt, emotional and financial, grew lopsided. I stopped waiting for thank you. I started hoping for acknowledgement. Maybe a small note on the fridge. A simple "we see what you do." Instead, I got reminders. "You're so dependable, Nora." Not like Bella. She's always chasing something new. Dependable was their polite word for used to giving without question. Then came the night that cracked everything open. I had driven home late from work and heard voices drifting from the kitchen: Mom, Dad, and Bella. I froze in the hallway, hidden behind the coat rack. Mom's voice was calm, almost amused. "Of course she helps out. She likes feeling needed." Dad chuckled. "She's got no head for business, but she's got heart. Let her think it's charity." Bella giggled. "When you sell this place, she doesn't get a cut, right?" "Of course not," Mom said. She's been living here rent-free all these years. If anything, we've done her a favor. Something inside me went still. I remember staring at the pattern of light on the carpet, realizing that every nail, every dollar, every sleepless night wasn't building security, it was building a cage I didn't own. I walked quietly back to my car and sat there until sunrise. I didn't cry. Not yet. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out the middle of me and left only skin. Over the next few days, I moved like a ghost through the house. They acted normal, asking me to pick up groceries, to check the water heater again. I did it all mechanically, as if rehearsing my own disappearance. Then the text came. It was almost casual. A single buzz on my phone while I was closing up at work. We changed all the locks. You don't live here anymore. Let's see how brave you really are. I read it twice. The words didn't sting, they burned clean, like acid on paper. I stared at the photo of our house on my lock screen, the one with sunlight spilling across the porch I'd rebuilt, and realized it wasn't my home anymore. Maybe it never was. That night, I drove there anyway. The porch light was on, the windows glowing soft and golden. My key turned halfway, then jammed. I pressed my forehead to the door, breathing in the smell of cedar and paint. Inside, I could hear laughter. Bella's laugh. My mother's. The clink of glasses. I whispered, okay. If they wanted to erase me with a lock, I'd come back with something stronger, paperwork, proof, and the truth they'd tried to bury. That was the night I stopped being the fixer and started becoming the reckoner. The next morning, I drove back to the house that had once been mine. The air was sharp, the kind that stung your lungs and cleared your thoughts. My stomach churned, but I told myself this wasn't about emotion anymore, it was about truth. When I pulled into the driveway, the sight of my mother's car parked neatly in the same spot felt almost insulting, as if nothing had changed. The curtains fluttered, lights glowed inside, the world continued as though I hadn't been exiled from it 12 hours earlier. I climbed the porch steps and rang the doorbell. The familiar chime echoed through the walls. Through the frosted glass, I saw movement. Then her voice, distant but distinct, came through the intercom. Who is it? It's me, Mom, I said, steady but not cold. Open the door. A pause. Then, what do you need, Nora? I need to know why you changed the locks. Another pause. Then the sound of a latch sliding, but the door only opened an inch. The security chain held it in place. She peeked out, face carefully composed, eyes darting past me toward the street. You shouldn't just show up like this, she said. It's early. It's 10 in the morning, I replied. I live here. Or I did. What's going on? She sighed, pressing her lips together. Your father thought it was time you had your own space. You're 34, Nora. You can't stay here forever. I wasn't staying, I said. I was paying. That made her blink, a small flicker of discomfort that she quickly smoothed away. We appreciate what you've done, sweetheart, but you can't expect to live here rent-free forever. Rent-free? My voice cracked. I've paid the mortgage for 14 years. Utilities, maintenance, repairs, all of it. Dad's voice floated in from behind her. Oh, come on, Nora. You helped out, that's all. Family helps each other. Then why lock me out? He appeared beside her, holding a mug of coffee like this was any other day. Because you were getting too attached. You've been tense lately, picking fights. Maybe some space will clear your head. I laughed, but it came out wrong, like a cough. Space? You threw me out, Dad. You changed the locks. Mom shifted her weight. You're overreacting. You're emotional. You know how you get. That line. You know how you get. It was the same one they used every time I caught them in a lie or asked for accountability. It turned truth into hysteria and shut me up before I could respond. But not this time. I'm not emotional, I said quietly. I'm prepared. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder. Receipts, invoices, screenshots of bank transfers, printed copies of text messages. I laid it all on the porch rail between us. This is every dollar I've put into this house. Every bill I've paid. Every repair I covered. Mom's brows furrowed. Nora, what is this supposed to prove? That this wasn't charity, I said. This was partnership. Dad scoffed. Partnership? Don't be ridiculous. We never asked you for anything. That's not true, I said. You asked all the time. You just called it help. Mom's tone sharpened. You're making this ugly. We're family. Money shouldn't come between us. I stared at her, amazed by the irony. Money didn't come between us, I said. Lies did. Bella appeared at the top of the stairs in a robe, hair still damp from the shower. What's going on? Why are you yelling? Your sister's upset, Mom said quickly. She's having a hard time letting go. Bella crossed her arms. Letting go of what? I met her eyes. The house. The one I helped pay for. The one they've decided isn't mine. Bella rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic again. No one owes you anything. That word again lodged itself in my chest. You know what, Bella? You're right. No one owes me anything. But people do owe the truth. She laughed softly. God, you sound like a lawyer. I might get one, I said. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Dad's voice dropped low. You wouldn't dare. I would, I said. And I will. He stepped closer, voice hard now. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? You've been living off our generosity for years. I pointed at the folder. Your generosity cost me $85,000. Mom's voice trembled, not from fear, but anger. That's enough. Take your papers and go. You're embarrassing yourself. I took a deep breath. I'm not the one who should be embarrassed. Her eyes flashed. You think you're the victim here? We raised you. We gave you everything. No, I said. You raised me to believe love means silence. You gave me guilt and called it gratitude. Dad moved as if to close the door, but I stepped back and held up my phone, the camera already recording. Don't worry, I said. I won't come inside. I just want this on record. Mom frowned. On record? For when you pretend this never happened. I looked straight into the camera and spoke clearly, my voice steady. My name is Nora Ortega. I've contributed to this property for 14 years, mortgage payments, repairs, taxes, everything. My parents changed the locks and denied me access. But I have proof, and I will prove it. Mom gasped softly. Dad muttered, unbelievable. Bella snapped, you're insane. Maybe I was, for thinking loyalty meant safety. But in that moment, I felt more sane than I ever had. I ended the recording, slipped the phone into my pocket, and stepped off the porch. As I walked down the path, I didn't look back. The camera's red light still blinked behind me, reflecting off the glass door, evidence that I'd stopped being their fixer and started being something else entirely, a witness. The law office didn't look like much from the outside, just a row of dull windows above a coffee shop, but the sign on the door said Marcus Hale, attorney at law, and that was enough. I'd already rehearsed what to say 100 times on the drive over, but the moment I sat down in his office, every practiced line dissolved into silence. He didn't rush me. Marcus had that quiet kind of focus that made you feel seen without being watched. He offered coffee. I shook my head, then he folded his hands and said, "Start from the beginning." So I did. I told him about 14 years of payments and repairs, about the roof, the heater, the taxes, about the night they changed the locks and the text that turned me into a stranger. He listened without interrupting, only nodding occasionally or jotting notes in the margin of a yellow legal pad. When I finished, the office felt too quiet. I realized I'd been holding my breath. Marcus leaned back slightly. "What you're describing fits something called unjust enrichment," he said. "It happens when one party benefits unfairly at another's expense. You've essentially built equity in a property that legally isn't yours, but morally and financially should be." The words morally and financially hit harder than I expected. For the first time, someone wasn't telling me to calm down or move on. He was naming what had happened. He continued, "We might also argue for a constructive trust. It's a legal remedy courts use when someone holds property that should, in fairness, belong partly to another. You've got receipts, transfers, documentation. That's not charity, that's contribution." I stared at him. "So, I'm not crazy?" Marcus smiled faintly. "No, Nora. You're not crazy. You're careful." He began sorting through the folder I'd brought, dividing papers into neat stacks: payments, utilities, repairs. "Keep everything," he said. "Dates, invoices, even texts. Anything that shows intent or expectation." He paused at one page, my mother's late-night message, "We changed all the locks." He tapped it once with his pen. That alone speaks volumes. I felt a strange warmth rise in my chest, not joy exactly, but relief. For the first time, my story wasn't just emotion. It had structure. Proof. Before I left, he gave me a checklist. "Go through your bank statements. Pull every transfer that mentions the mortgage. Find photos of the repairs, before and after if you have them. And talk to anyone who can confirm you paid for the work." I nodded, gripping the paper like a lifeline. That night, I started making calls. Most people didn't pick up, but one did, Mrs. Patel, the neighbor who'd lived next door since I was a teenager. She sounded surprised to hear from me but kind as ever. When I explained what had happened, she went quiet for a long moment. Then she said softly, "I always wondered how they afforded all that work." The next day she met me at a cafe, a small folder in hand. Inside were photocopies of invoices she'd signed as witness when contractors showed up to fix the roof and the plumbing. Each one had my name written in the payer section. "You always took care of things," she said, her eyes watering. "You shouldn't have to prove that, but I suppose now you can." Her words cracked something open inside me, a truth I'd ignored for too long. Being good didn't mean being silent. Generosity wasn't weakness, it was evidence. When I got home, I spread everything across my table: receipts, screenshots, statements, Mrs. Patel's folder, Marcus's checklist. The surface disappeared under paper, and for a moment it looked chaotic. But to me, it was order. Every page was a memory reclaimed from manipulation. The house they locked me out of had walls. What I had now were facts, each one like a brick. I sent Marcus an email with scanned copies of everything and wrote at the end, "I'm ready to fight for what's mine." He replied within the hour, "Then we'll do it by the book." For the first time in months, I slept. Not because I'd forgiven them, but because I finally understood something crystal clear: justice doesn't start with rage. It starts with record keeping. The mediation room was smaller than I expected, no marble floors, no echoes of power. Just a rectangular table, 6 chairs, and a pitcher of water sweating in the middle. Still, my hand shook as I smoothed my skirt. Marcus noticed and murmured, "Breathe. They're not gods, they're just people who got too used to taking." The door opened, and my parents walked in like they owned the oxygen. Mom's perfume hit me first, sweet, expensive, suffocating. Dad followed, posture straight, eyes sharp with the confidence of someone who'd always had the final word. Bella trailed behind them, glued to her phone until she saw me. She smiled that polished influencer smile. "You look tired, Nora." I smiled back. "You look rehearsed." Their lawyer, a graying man named Everett, nodded politely to Marcus before taking a seat. He arranged his papers like someone setting a stage. "Let's begin," he said. Marcus leaned forward. "We're here to settle the matter of equitable ownership and unjust enrichment in the Ortega property. My client, Ms. Nora Ortega, has provided extensive financial and labor contributions to the house in question over the last 14 years. We're seeking acknowledgement of her equitable interest in that property." Everett gave a tight smile. "With respect, that claim is baseless. Family assistance isn't a contract. What Nora contributed were gifts, voluntary acts of kindness. Gratitude doesn't equal ownership." Mom nodded eagerly, clutching Dad's hand. "Exactly. She's always been generous. We didn't ask for anything." Marcus flipped open a binder, my binder, and the soft sound of the clasp snapping echoed like a gavel strike. "Then let's review what wasn't asked for." He began placing documents on the table: bank transfers labeled mortgage assistance, receipts from Home Depot, copies of repair invoices signed by me, dated photos of the roof before and after repairs. Each page landed like a small thunderclap. Dad shifted in his seat. "So she helped. That doesn't make her an owner." Marcus didn't look up. "Not by title, perhaps. But under constructive trust doctrine, equity looks beyond titles. It looks at intent, contribution, and expectation." Everett frowned. "Intent? Expectation? Those are subjective." Marcus tapped the folder. "Not when you have written evidence." He slid forward a printed text, the one from my mother, words crisp in black ink: "We changed all the locks. You don't live here anymore. Let's see how brave you really are." For a long beat, no one spoke. The only sound was the hum of the overhead lights. Mom's face drained of color. "That was a joke. We were upset." Marcus cut her off gently. "Upset enough to lock out someone who had been paying your mortgage?" Everett reached for the paper, scanning it. "This could be taken out of context." "Context," Marcus said evenly, "is exactly what we have." He pulled out another document, a notarized statement from Mrs. Patel. "Your neighbor confirms Ms. Ortega paid the contractors for the roof and plumbing. Here are the invoices, each with her signature in the payer line. Here's the contractor's email confirming who paid the final balance." Dad muttered, "She's just trying to turn generosity into profit." Marcus clicked a remote. A small screen flickered to life on the wall, showing a paused frame of the doorbell camera. "And yet," he said, pressing play, "here's my client explaining to your own security camera that she contributed for 14 years, was locked out, and intended to pursue legal remedy." My recorded voice filled the room. "My name is Nora Ortega. I've contributed to this property for 14 years, mortgage payments, repairs, taxes, everything. My parents changed the locks and denied me access. But I have proof, and I will prove it." When the video ended, silence returned. Mom's hands trembled in her lap. Bella whispered something to her, but Mom didn't respond. Everett cleared his throat, lowering his voice to my parents. We might want to. Marcus didn't let him finish. There's also this, he said, holding up a photo of Bella's social media post from the night of my eviction, her smiling in front of the house with the caption, "Finally just us three." He laid it down gently. That's not the post of a family misunderstanding. That's intent to exclude. Dad slammed his palm on the table. This is absurd. She's weaponizing family. Marcus didn't flinch. You weaponized it first, Mr. Ortega. My client is just leveling the field. Everett looked at the mountain of documents, the signatures, the timestamps, the witness letters, the video. He exhaled heavily, rubbing his temple. We're in a difficult position. I caught it the moment everything shifted. Marcus did too. What was that? He asked, his tone mild but deliberate. Everett sighed. I said, we're in a difficult position. Marcus leaned back. Or, as most people would phrase it, we're in trouble. Everett didn't respond, but the flush rising up his neck was answer enough. Mom finally broke, her voice cracking. Nora, please. We're family. Don't do this. We'll talk at home. There is no home, I said softly. You changed the locks, remember? Bella's eyes glistened. You're ruining us. I shook my head. No. You ruined us when you decided I didn't count. Marcus gathered the papers into a neat stack and slid them toward Everett. Our proposal is simple. 50% equitable interest in the property, acknowledgement of unjust enrichment, and sale within 6 months with proceeds divided accordingly. If we go to court, the evidence becomes public. I don't think any of us want that. Dad's mouth opened, but Everett raised a hand. Don't, he murmured. The silence stretched again, tense, brittle, absolute. Then Everett said, barely audible, we'll sign. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. After 14 years of silence, of debt disguised as devotion, of being the dependable ghost in their story, the words "will sign" felt like the first breath of my own life. Marcus handed me the pen. My hand didn't shake this time. I signed my name, steady, deliberate, final. When it was over, my parents stood awkwardly by the door. Mom tried to speak, but no sound came out. Dad's face was stone. Bella looked away. Marcus placed a copy of the agreement in front of me and whispered, "You just bought yourself freedom." As we left the room, I glanced back one last time. The binder of proof still sat on the table, a silent monument to every forgotten sacrifice. For years, they'd said family doesn't keep score. Turns out, I should have been keeping receipts all along. The house sold faster than anyone expected. Maybe buyers could sense that the walls had already emptied themselves of loyalty and laughter. When the realtor called to confirm the sale, I stood in the parking lot outside my new job and let the news sink in. The place that had drained 14 years of my life was finally gone, and for the first time, what I got back wasn't guilt, it was equity. My share came as a wire transfer, clean, quiet numbers appearing in my bank account. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like balance. The next week, I used part of that money as a down payment on a small riverside apartment, 1 bedroom, a balcony that caught morning light, and floors that didn't creak with old ghosts. When I signed the papers, I asked the locksmith for a new set of heavy brass keys. I wanted to be the first and only person to turn them in the lock. The day I moved in, I didn't invite anyone. No speeches, no champagne. Just me, a few boxes, and the hum of a refrigerator I'd bought myself. I unpacked slowly, letting each sound settle into the space, drawer sliding open, cup set on the counter, window clicking shut. Every ordinary sound felt sacred. That evening, I went to the balcony with a small pot of basil Mrs. Patel had given me. Grow something that needs care, she'd said, but not sacrifice. I pressed my fingers into the soil, inhaled the green scent, and thought about how strange freedom felt, weightless, but solid beneath my feet. Inside, the binder of evidence sat on a shelf, closed but not forgotten. I didn't keep it as a reminder of pain. I kept it as proof that I'd once built a life for others and then built one for myself. When night fell, I locked the door from the inside, turned the key, and whispered the words that finally sounded true: I'm home. Family, I realized, isn't who shares your last name. It's who doesn't change the locks when you stop paying their bills. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that kindness without boundaries becomes currency for those who never plan to pay you back. Love doesn't mean silence, and keeping records isn't cold, it's how you protect the truth you lived. I used to think family loyalty meant fixing every broken thing they handed me. Now I know that peace begins the moment you stop mistaking endurance for love. If you've ever been cut off, dismissed, or told your pain was just overreacting, tell your story. You never know who needs to hear it. Share this video, write your own, speak your truth, it matters. And if you believe that justice can be quiet, that healing can be earned, stay here with me. Subscribe for more stories about the strength it takes to walk away and the power it takes to rebuild.